So I'm so happy to be here with an old friend, Frank Kaufman, who is the president of 12 Gates Foundation. And Frank is doing amazing work in helping to promote peace around the world. And we'll have a chance to hear from him and about the exciting things that he's doing. Frank is a member of the advisory board for Peace Stars, and so I deeply appreciate his efforts. So, Frank, maybe to begin with, you could give a little bit of background about 12 Gates and the kinds of things that you're doing to really help promote peace around the world right now.
All right. Thank you very much. 12 Gates is rooted in several prior incarnations of the same work.
Hmm.
Perhaps so 12 Gates is an interfaith organization.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and the name comes from a passage in Revelations which describes the city of God descending to earth, and there's 12 gates, four to the north, south, east, and west. And we picked that name. It's more poetic than descriptive. Instead of this peace organization or this peace institute, we named it 12 Gates Foundation to capture the notion that um, every single type of person can enter the city of God. It represents the entire human race with all the different cultures. So I quite like the name. That's its current incarnation. But prior to that, or leading up to that, all through the course of my life, I've run the interreligious work leading up to the final founding of 12 Gates as the most recent one of these that I've done. So in the earliest phases, I was involved primarily in an academic rendering of interfaith. It was called New Era or New Ecumenical Research Association.
Uh-huh.
And that was work among scholars of religion to have them pioneer the vision for the possibility that religions could cooperate. Um, scholars have a lot more freedom than clerics. Clerics are more bound to the orthodoxy of their faith. Scholars can be a bit more creative. So it was a good initial point to break through any traditional barriers that religions have between and among one another. But soon after that, the real nut, or the real kind of where the hard work really begins, is to try to get clerics and people and authorities of the traditions themselves to begin to be conversational, cooperative, collaborative. That's where it really gets difficult. And that was that the founding of the organization which attended to this matter was called the Council for the World's Religions. That's where I got my kind of biggest start, biggest notoriety, even to the degree to which I continue to be known or sought in the world of interreligious relations today really arises from that organization, that founding, and that breakthrough. I think it was an ingenious concept, the Council for the World's Religions. It had two aspects that were unprecedented in interreligious work. The biggest one, perhaps, was the insight into the pioneering of what's called intra-religious dialogue. And so that, of course, means that the conversation is within a single family of faith.
Uh-huh.
And prior to that, prior to the founding of the council, the only religion that had any sort of developed intra-religious conversation was Christianity, which was it's called ecumenism. Jesus called for it prior to his assassination, and so it is a constant developed field. He prayed that his followers be one, even as God and he are one. And so Christian ecumenism has always been an aspiration within that tradition because its own founder prayed to God, even almost his dying wish was this. And so people know that the founding roots of Christian stability are originate in what's called ecumenical councils. So even these early councils are trying to get Christians on the same page. All the other world religions have the exact same circumstances. They have many different points of view and factions and differences within themselves, identical to Christianity. It's normal in every single religion, but none of them have that impetus towards what would be called ecumenical or intra-religious work, simply because it didn't have that odd moment in their roots in which their founder said, "Let there never be any division among my followers." So the Council for the World's Religions was pioneered this uh, uh, framing of interreligious relations. The underlying or background observation was that anything that's divided within itself has no real capacity to be in dialogue across the way. So if you have a person, for example, who um, can't be relied upon. One minute he's the best guy in the world, next minute he's a complete wreck, and he says, "I'll meet you Tuesday," like I just did to you. I'll meet you Tuesday, and doesn't show up. If they're divided, or if the entity itself is not in order, then it's not really well equipped to represent. So every religion is divided, and then they're saying, "Oh, we're going to have Jewish-Muslim dialogue." Okay, so some Jews get together, some Muslims get together. They do hard work, they have breakthroughs, they actually finally transcend some major differences. And then 80% of the rest of the Jews say, "Well, that's not really Judaism, or that's not really what I believe." And so the progress is undermined by the division in the background.
Yep.
So the Council for the World's Religions pursued these two rails simultaneously, intra-religious and interreligious. But the interesting thing about that is, as any as would be obvious for anybody that thought about it for a minute or two, it's the intra-religious issues that are the really rough ones. It's kind of like there's a very famous line among law enforcement. They say the last one, if there's a call, it's called a domestic.
Yeah.
That's where they do not want to go. And that's what intra-religious is, a domestic.
Yep.
It's those problems that you don't want to get near. You just don't want. And so because our organization was committed to those things, you are actually being invited into the home to solve the problems in another person's home. So the amount of trust that the mediator or the reconciling organization, the amount of trust that has to be built, and the amount of kind of humility and nuance to be among other the normal way of thinking would be, we have our own problems. Why are we inviting this guy in here? What is he even? He's not even Jewish, or he's not even Christian. Why is he even here? And then that's on the challenging side. On the positive side is, why did it take this person to do what we should have always done ourselves? And then in a way, you're a big hero. So it was through the intra-religious dimension of the Council for the World's Religions that I developed relationships with religious leaders that were incredibly intimate, like remarkably intimate. I stayed in the homes of, it's one thing to go have an audience with the Pope. It's another thing to go sleep in the home of the chief rabbi of somewhere that he kicks his daughter out of her room for the guests. So these relationships were intimate and lifelong and lasting, and they required a lot of trust. And as you yourself know, all occasions of reconciliation are tearful, they're searing, they stay with you forever. And I, across the years of my life, were allowed to be a part of, or even seminal to these moments that finally conflict has ended or finally cooperation has begun. So it was really that early period of time when I was doing the Council for the World's Religions
Uh-huh.
that the my reputation or my knowledge or my work with religious leaders and founders and major religious powers on earth reached a level that is um, it kind of coveted. It's just a simple fact. A lot of interreligious work, without wanting to sound critical, is posturing in a way, or at best is flying to a hotel and learning how not to cross your feet one way or the other, or learning how to not do this on a Friday or a Saturday. Or it's valuable stuff, but it's a little bit too occasional uh, to be uh, to be lastingly transformational. So that was the Council for the World's Religions. At the same time that I was running the council, there were a number of colleagues who were running parallel types of interreligious activity. A friend of mine was running a youth pilgrimage thing. I think it was called the I forget the name of it. The youth, I forget the name of it, but basically collections of young people of all different religions would travel together to each other's sacred sites. It was a world pilgrimage.
Mhm.
And those young people are some of the best interreligious figures alive now. Now they're 40, 50, 60, 70. But when they were teens, and then the whole group full of Christians, Muslims, Jews, Hindus, Zoroastrian, they'd all go to maybe the Zoroastrian sacred site. And then on that occasion, the Zoroastrian was the host of all of his friends. And you know what travel does to people. You don't have a toothbrush, or some guy wakes up, with all everybody else's blanket because he was cold. Young people are funny, and so they were doing this on for the sake of religious life,
Uh-huh.
and they then they'd be the host, and all their religious pride would come roaring forth, trying their best to explain the depth of their religion. It was their moment. And a lot of people who are only vaguely familiar with interreligious affairs imagine that it's a danger to dilute your religion. They're afraid that interreligious, you're going to lose your faith or grow weaker or become relativized, is the term. But the truth is, it's the exact opposite. When you're in interreligious, harmonious interreligious conversation, then you have a chance to try to tell the best of who you are and what you are. And it strengthens your faith enormously
And
to bring
reinforce each
yourself
other's,
to
valid points and common ground.
right. And then curiously enough, you're in the best possible company. Like I might talk to the truck driver across the street or the drugstore guy and tell him about my religion. He'll be interested or she'll be interested, and it'll be a great moment. But when I'm talking to the other people who are religious, then they're getting you because
Yep.
they have their version of the same thing.
Yep.
So these other concurrently running interreligious activities, like the youth one, and I was doing the one with religious leaders. The academic one continued on under different friends' auspices. And so in 91, all of them were brought together under a single umbrella.
Uh-huh.
And that became named the Interreligious Federation for World Peace. A long name, but not, it's unwieldy, but it's not a bad one because it explains well, people get it. So when all of them became harmonized under a single umbrella to coordinate with themselves and benefit from each other, I ended up the director of that umbrella. So my expertise continued to be primarily among clergy and clerics and authorities in the faiths themselves. Nevertheless, I was also administratively over uh, all the others, the larger group. And that lasted until about 2000, maybe 13
Wow.
or young. I can't remember the exact year, 2013 or 14. So from 91 to I did the work was the Interreligious Federation for World Peace. And then after 14 or 15, I finally founded the organization, which just inherits the full universe of all I've done every day of my life for 50 years of the interreligious work. And now it transpires under the title 12 Gates Foundation.
Yes.
And so that's the history of what uh, and who and what I am or what that is, the 12 Gates Foundation.
Wow, that's amazing. So, so from what I understand about your current work, there's kind of three areas that you're focusing on. One is continuing dialogues. Secondly is leadership training, educating young people and other people to become peacemakers worldwide, which is so critical. And excitingly, and from my point of view, is mediation. You're actually involved in getting in there and helping to end conflicts. So, I mean, how important is that?
Thank you.
Can can you maybe let's jump to that one. That's the most exciting for me is can you talk about some of your experiences and actually working to end actual conflicts, not just talking about it, but getting in there and doing it?
Yeah, yeah. Um, that's the most dramatic, the most interesting. It's the uh opening night. It's the curtains open, you're on stage and uh whether you have anything or not is right there in conflict situations.
Yeah.
Um, it's the one people can relate to most. It's but behind that, whether a person or a group is going to have any success in that has to do with the hours and hours and hours of the boring and uninteresting. It's not boring and uninteresting, but the non-dramatic things. You
Sure.
really have to have the basis, the background, and the foundation. Um, that's so. So before you get to conflict mediation, there has to be a tremendous amount of work, both in the building of relationships that you're going to actually try to bring to bear on the emergency of stopping a conflict. And then that's the unseen part on the other side, on the invisible side of the conflict mediation activity. There's research. You have to be intelligent. You have to know the religions you're dealing with, and you can't only know it from book learning. You have to know it from someone having cried about it when trying to tell you about it. Maybe if they're trying to explain what Islam is, and their best way of communicating to you is through a story about their grandson or something like that. This is where you begin to understand a religion, not only Google it or AI it or something like that. Everybody can acquire information and knowledge, and so you need that deep background before you're likely to be able to make much of a mark in terms of actual conflict resolution. But just before I talk about some examples, and these indeed are the interesting stories. On the other side, once once actual what's it called? Material conflict. Isn't that what it's called in military terms? It's like war breaks out. People are,
Yeah. As opposed
once,
to info conflicts or idea, there's a lot of different types
yeah,
of
or
conflict.
kind of once war has broken out, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter if it's material uh, um, or data driven or tech
Yeah.
attacks. Um, Once war has broken out, the type of work I do is impotent, honestly speaking. It shifts to the mission and job of political leaders, military leaders, diplomats, etc. It spirituality can happen behind the scenes, but it will not go into stopping conflict once there's been an outbreak of conflict. So the work of interreligious work on the matter of conflict, it can be it it can be preventative at best. And if you can't pull it off, um, you uh, it it falls out of what religious leaders can do.
Music is an aspect of our awareness, of our experience, that connects deeply to our heart, directly to our heart. People are not only touched by music, they're moved to action. Feeling, experience can be changed through a song. People can be brought to tears by music. So when we're deeply touched by something, then we're moved to act. We're moved to change the way we see the world. Music is so powerful. It's so profound. To learn more about Peace Stars, please visit peacestars.tv. And we hope you'll make a contribution of any size to help us to complete our pilot video featuring 2 fabulous artists in northern Nigeria. Thank you so much.
The first Gulf War, Saddam Hussein had invaded Kuwait, and he had decided to define this as jihad, as a religious war, because he understood Kuwait to be aligned with Western powers, and there's a form of jihadi interpretation which regards the degenerate, immoral West as the primary enemy of the sensibilities of Muslim believers. That's an interpretation of jihad, and Hussein's invasion of Kuwait, he attempted to frame it as jihad, and it was on the brink of becoming a war against the West, which some jihadi movements have undertaken or attempted, a war against the West. And so if he could have successfully defined his aggressions in Kuwait as jihad, it would have enabled him to draw the support of other Muslim state actors, Muslim powers, Muslim individuals, and world opinion on the religious side. He's defining this as a matter of religious obligation. And so at the time, the Council for the World's Religions gathered 9 Grand Muftis from 9 Muslim countries in Alexandria, Egypt. The highest authority in Islam is a Grand Mufti. It's actually like a Supreme Court justice, and each country has them. A Grand Mufti is the highest arbiter of Sharia law in a country. That's what a Grand Mufti is. And so these are the ones that will assess fatwas and the like. And so we had gathered 9 Grand Muftis from 9 Muslim countries in a conference or a meeting with
That's like the entire Supreme Court.
yeah, not quite. It's just country by country, Pakistan, Israel.
Yeah.
Israel has a Grand Mufti
Sure.
because of its large Muslim population. Yemen, Syria, and so on. We had 9. And because they are the authorities on Islam and Sharia law, the mission of that meeting, that conference, was to assess or decide whether or not Hussein's claim was legitimate. They would be the arbiters of whether this was jihad or whether this was just
Aggression.
geopolitical, military, financial opportunism, or aggression, as you call it. Yeah. So we succeeded. It was one of the most difficult 2 or 3 days I've ever been through in my life. I myself came under heavy attack of one of the participants who late in the game almost undid all of our progress. That's its own story. I had failed to, I had failed, this is really embarrassing and legitimate failure on my part. I had failed to notify the Egyptian authorities that we were having this conference. And I had 12 international, I had like the highest payload ever sitting in a room. It's more than stupid of me. And so after our first session, we went out to the other room for the coffee break. And when we came back to continue our conversation, the walls were lined with heavily armed Egyptian army, just standing there, like positioned 4 feet away from each other, all with major firepower sitting there.
Very
And
conducive to mediation.
yeah, yeah. No, but they were furious and
Yeah.
legitimately so. It's like, why are you creating the biggest target in the history of Islam and not even informing us that so we can protect this situation more than needs protection. So they weren't there threatening us. They were kindly there doing something that idiot idealist me yeah. So they remained guarding this event, and I was definitely close to do not ever come to this country. It was like really close. But by God's grace, I didn't fall afoul of Egypt, but I certainly got them angry. But at the end of this conversation, 2 days of massively difficult conversation. Um, they agreed. They agreed. It was not jihad. It was not a legitimate, viable account of a religious action that passed the standards whereby Muslim authorities would give support to Hussein's claim. And I'm very proud to say, and I really believe that we successfully averted what later happened in 2001 with the 9/11 attacks. We successfully averted a major international civilizational clash of civilizations, Muslim, Western Europe clash at the time. We really did. Those 9 muftis concurred, and they issued authoritative fatwas back to their country immediately, and Hussein was isolated. The tragedy, Lawrence, is that HW, Bush Sr.,
Yeah.
had given a deadline for Hussein to leave. And I hope everybody knows that the only person who gets a deadline is yourself. When you issue a deadline, you're the sucker in the situation. You break it, you're an idiot, line in the sand, like the Obama line in the sand, right? You break it and you lose your authority. And then if you have an opening for negotiations and diplomatic resolution, you've already blown it out the window because he can't get out that day or something like that. So that war broke out after my organization, Council for the World's Religions, had successfully created the conditions on the ground that the war did not need to happen. Because of that, I believe diplomatic error myself. I no one gives deadlines. If people watch the current president, he goes, it might be today, it might be next month. We'll just keep an eye on things. This is not like by Tuesday, and then you're stuck. So that war.
Just were you reporting to the U.S. State Department like the
Yes.
So they were apprised of what you were doing.
Yes, this was the highest I'd ever reached with my
Yeah,
organization.
yeah,
Yeah, I've never been. I've been in. There's some major things we've done. There's some major things we've done, but this was my biggest moment where I have open channels of communication with Moscow, open channels of communication with the White House, and so on and so forth. This was the one. And and we could have stopped that war. We successfully set the conditions to stop that war. It was blown by the existence of this deadline. But what happened, if you recall, it was like the shortest war ever. It
yeah.
came and went, right? It was the aftermath wasn't short. But so that's just an example of the type of, but those muftis, I knew many of them personally very well, very well. Um, and I had to know Islam quite well uh, in order to be permitted to mediate among them. They just can't let just any old idiot. So that's one of the examples of the type of actual conflict mediation. I guess that's the biggest one that I do have many. I was involved in the collapse of the Soviet Union in collaboration with the Metropolitan Filaret of Danilovsk Monastery was central to these phenomena. So I do have some major things in the history of my work, but I guess that Gulf War one was quite an exciting thing. Um, yeah, yeah,
Amazing. So, the Geneva Academy says, according to their statistics, there's like 110 historic conflicts that are going on around the world right now. I don't know what percentage of those are interreligious conflicts, but I suspect that there's a bunch of them that I know, like in Nigeria and Ghana, some places there's the Islam factions in the north and the Christians in the south, and there's
yes,
people are getting murdered. Um,
yes.
so is it your feeling that there's really no way to interject or to work in a situation like that and bring reconciliation? Because that's kind of like the focus of what Peace Arts is envisioning doing by finding people on the opposite sides of those conflicts. Uh, we're going to bring artists, songwriters together across those conflicts to create a song about reconciliation and a vision of the what's possible. And then for the ones that we choose, we'll make a very powerful 15-minute video that highlights the song, highlights the backstory of the artist and the relationship, but also shines a light on the history of that conflict, and points towards a better future. And as those videos are propagated across the internet, get millions and millions of views, we hope to create more and more support uh, for for a peaceful reconciliation rather than the continuation of these ridiculous, totally counterproductive conflicts that are killing people, through all of history. So
Yes,
do you think that there's a possibility to intervene in those kinds of things that have been going on for so long, and bring a different vision of what's possible?
absolutely. I absolutely do. And I think what you're doing is is kind of genius and indispensable. What While conflicts are going on, the way they're stopped is with ceasefires. The way they're stopped is with political negotiations in order to stop. Those are ceasefires. But the long range work
Mhm.
has to be led by the shapers of culture.
Yes.
The cultures have to be reconciled. And in my particular work, I work with religious leaders. In your particular work, you work with artists, which are they're equally contributors to the introduce the horizons of the possibility of harmony,
Yes.
both fields. And while a conflict is going on, even though I say that I can't with my religious work stop that conflict. What I do, or what we do, is get religious leaders from the area, out of the country,
Mhm.
to a nice place. Say if it's a North Africa conflict,
Yep.
get them up into Spain somewhere at a pleasant environment, and over a weekend allow them out of the limelight to try to hammer out what they can do with uh, with the type of authority over human beings that they have,
Yes.
and they spearhead and lead the way. Uh, and then at the right moment, oftentimes political leaders are members of one religion or another, or they oftentimes, especially outside of the secular West, religious leaders, the political leaders they're kind of afraid of, of the religious leader, that
It's
he
true.
can
That's
send them to
absolutely true.
hell, like that would be bad. They don't want to go to hell.
Or
So
campaign against them.
yeah, that's another thing. Another thing, yeah. So, but very similarly, to have artists from opposite sides, the artists themselves are not opposite to one another. And the harmony, the inevitable harmony of creating art and music, um, bringing the future into the present with their songs and with their videos. And the other thing about the art, the work that you're doing, is everyone knows, it goes without saying, that it has hugely more appeal to young people
That's
than religious leaders. They're not Religious leaders are not as badly out of reach to the young, but still the current society and culture runs on the rails of media and entertainment, no doubt.
yeah.
And
And
so I think I'm very excited for the
yeah,
work of your work.
I think, from kind of like a religious perspective, uh, music music has the greatest capability to connect to people's hearts. Very on a deeper spiritual level than intellectual things, or even belief structures. Music can get in
Gets all
there.
the way in
Yeah,
fast and transformationally, and
that's
it
right.
doesn't need the mental struggle to get at what is being said.
And it can be spread worldwide much more virally than some theological argument. It's
Yeah,
music is just, people like the sound and they start humming it, and hey,
yeah,
check this out.
it's fantastic,
Yes.
Lawrence. It's fantastic. I love it.
So
I love it.
anyway, I'm so honored that we have you on our advisory board, and I look forward to finding ways to work together, as opportunities come up, with conflicts, to really bring your capability to the table, and to really, you know, directly impact those rather than just indirectly through culture.
Yeah,
Both are so important.
indeed, indeed. Yeah, I can't wait to see the more and more substantial fruits from our collective efforts and our mutual support. It's really will be great.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been a long time since we've had a chance to talk, but I really appreciate this opportunity.
Me
Best
too.
best of luck with all your efforts, and uh, amazing work that you're doing. I really, how can our audience support you? What can we do to help 12 Gates?
Uh, I guess the simplest thing would be to just start by familiarizing yourself with us through our website. Yeah, so go to the website, familiarize yourself with the work, and there's ways to become a member, there's ways to donate, and there's ways to be in touch with us.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so very much, Dr. Frank Kaufman. Keep up the amazing work. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Music is an aspect of our awareness, of our experience that connects deeply to our heart, directly to our heart. People are not only touched by music, they're moved to action. Feeling, experience can be changed through a song. People can be brought to tears by music. So when we're deeply touched by something, then we're moved to act. We're moved to change the way we see the world. Music is so powerful. It's so profound. To learn more about Peace Stars, please visit peacestars.tv. And we hope you'll make a contribution of any size to help us to complete our pilot video featuring 2 fabulous artists in northern Nigeria. Thank you so much.